After my fiancé fled on our wedding day, his uncle married me. Everyone said that he had a first love hidden in his heart, and he married me just to save the face of our two families. It wasn't until we had a car accident and the car caught fire. He howled and tried to save me out of the car. Before the car exploded, he rushed over and hugged me tightly, saying, "There's no such thing as a first love. You're the one I love the most." When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of my wedding. Before my fiancé could flee, I ran towards his uncle. "Uncle, I like you. Will you marry me?" He paused slightly, and the corners of his lips curved up slightly. "Little niece, do you think I'm just a part of your little game?" The fire spread, but my leg was stuck in the car and I couldn't pull it out. Yuan tried his best to save me, and his cries were desperate and mournful. Seeing that the car was about to explode, I pushed him with all my strength. "Go away quickly. Don't worry about me. You can go and find your first love now." He was stunned for a moment, then rushed over and hugged me in his arms. "There's no such thing as a first love. You're the one I love the most." The strength of his arms around my shoulders tightened. At the moment before the car was destroyed and we died, I heard his murmur in my ear. "Man, in the next life, will you like me?" My answer was drowned out by the explosion, and I sank into darkness. A white light covered everything. I suddenly opened my eyes. In front of me was my reflection in the mirror, wearing a wedding dress. My much younger face was filled with joy. Blessing voices rang out one after another in my ears. "Congratulations, man. Happy wedding." The blankness in my mind was filled with the festive decorations around me. I suddenly realized that I had been reborn. Reborn on the day of my wedding to Xian. I was back. But what about him? I suddenly lifted my skirt and, regardless of the surprised looks of others, ran towards the hall ecstatically. I searched everywhere for Yuan's figure. After looking around several times, I finally saw him helping Xian's grandfather come down from the third floor. I was about to run up, but my parents grabbed me. "Man, what are you doing here? Look, your hair is all disheveled. And you haven't even put on your makeup. Come on. Hurry up. Don't miss the auspicious time." I anxiously glanced at Yuan. Before I could say anything, I was dragged away from the scene by my parents. Sitting in the dressing room, the image of Yuan's calmness just now flashed through my mind. It was so good. Before he died in the previous life, in order to save me, he was all dirty and disheveled, and his eyes were swollen from crying. He didn't look like the powerful CEO who was on the rich list at all. With hundreds of billions of assets, he didn't care about it at all. He only sighed that he couldn't grow old hand in hand with me. Thinking of this, my nose felt sour. I will fulfill his last request in the previous life with my actions in this life. The auspicious time was approaching. Xian and I stood on the stage respectively. Just like in the previous life, he had a smile on his face and looked kind. If I hadn't lived this life again, I wouldn't have been able to tell that he had the intention of fleeing the wedding at all. He and Ju families had been friends for generations. Xian and I had been childhood sweethearts. My feelings for him weren't very strong, but I did have a bit of affection for him. I thought he felt the same way. Just like this marriage. Although it was a betrothal arranged by the elders, it had been approved by both of us. But it wasn't until he fled the wedding in the previous life that I realized that he didn't like me at all. He even hated me because of the arranged marriage. That's why he maliciously went back on his word at the wedding and embarrassed me. Thinking of this, I withdrew my gaze from him. I frowned and turned my head, searching for Yuan's figure among the audience. My hand holding the bouquet was so nervous that it started to sweat. The wedding march suddenly started. The lights dimmed, and the scene became quiet. The MC's deep voice read out a beautiful preface. "Men." He read the vows. He was about to ask Xian if he was willing. In the previous life, he said a sonorous "I don't" loudly. He made me the laughingstock of everyone. Even though Yuan stepped in to save the situation later, the topic of Xian abandoning man still spread in the circle. And Yuan, implicated by me, also became the subject of others' idle gossip. So, I gripped the bouquet tightly, bowing to say, "I don't" before Xian. Suddenly, The door in the distance banged open. A tall and familiar figure stepped in. Bathed in light. I was overjoyed. I threw the bouquet hard and ran straight towards him. Everyone froze. And their eyes followed me. When I panted and reached Wei Yuan, the MC jokingly said, a bit slowly, the bride is in such a hurry. It's not even the part of paying respects to the elders yet. Amidst the laughter, Wei Yuan looked at me, and his expression was hard to read. My eyes were red. And my voice was choked. Uncle, having so self man say. I like you. Will you marry me? The people sitting nearby heard it clearly, and looked at Wei Yuan in surprise. He paused slightly, and the corners of his lips curved up slightly. Little niece. Do you think I'm just a part of your little game? In the previous life, before Wei Yuan married me instead of Xian, we didn't have much interaction. After I grew up, I rarely saw him in Xian's family. He was always busy with projects abroad and seldom returned to the country. When he did come back, he was always with Xian's grandfather. I did have a few brief encounters with him at Xian's family banquets. We didn't exchange more than 2 sentences. And they were all polite greetings. In his eyes, I was Xian's Fei Qi. I was his junior. Even if he had feelings for me, he didn't dare to show them at all. And in his opinion, I liked Xian. That's why he kept his distance from me even after we got married. As for me, having fulfilled I heard from others that he had someone he loved but couldn't have in his heart. So I didn't want to make myself look stupid. I just thought that our marriage was to maintain the relationship and business between the he and Ju families. Even if I developed feelings for him later, I silently told myself that it wasn't allowed. We wasted so many years in vain. Until we died. We realized that we were each other's only one. But it was too late. Thinking of this, tears welled up in my eyes. No, it's not like that. A look of panic flashed in Wei Yuan's eyes. His rough fingertips wiped the corners of my eyes. Why are you still like a little girl? Always crying? I grabbed his hand and said hoarsely. Wei Yuan, I want to be with you. Let's not waste any more time. He was stunned for a moment. And his thin lips parted slightly. But before he could speak, Xian's angry roar came through the microphone, hitting our eardrums loudly. Man, are you planning to flee the wedding? Because he was too far away. Xian didn't know what had happened between me and Wei Yuan. I wiped away my tears. Looking back at Xian's malicious smile, I retorted impatiently. Isn't it obvious? Fine. You've got some nerve. Xian glared at my parents who were sitting in the main guest seats. There was a lot of anger in his eyes. But can your man family afford the consequences of fleeing the wedding? His words echoed in the hall. The contempt in Xian's tone was even more piercing. Indeed, the Man family had been in a slump in the past 2 years. They wanted to rely on the Xian family to give them a hand. That's why my parents, after I reached the right age, had the nerve to take the betrothal letter signed by my grandfather and Xian's grandfather and go to the Xian family on their own initiative. I squinted my eyes and stared at Xian. So he knew all about this. But in the previous life, he still chose to do things that hurt me and my family. If it hadn't been for Wei Yuan, just the news of his running away at the last minute would have been enough for my family to bear. Not to mention the rise and fall of the Yu family's business. How could he have the nerve to threaten me with this now? I was just about to get angry when Wei Yuan beside me pulled me closer. Who said man is going to flee the wedding? His voice was lazy. But it carried an air of indesputability. I turned my head and looked into his eyes, capturing the piety in his eyes. She just wants to change to a more suitable partner. Change to whom? Suddenly, a hand appeared on my waist, holding me up straight. Is there anyone more suitable than me? The scene erupted in an uproar. Whispers and discussions filled the air. The uncle is snatching his nephew's wife? That's so exciting. So, Wei Yuan has been waiting for this moment all these years? This is interesting. The Man family has a big appetite, going after both the uncle and the nephew. Wei Yuan was 10 years older than me. In the previous life, after Xian left, Wei Yuan promptly stepped forward and took on the role of the groom. People at the scene also said that he was an old cow eating young grass, and laughed at him for picking up the discarded shoes that his nephew didn't want. worried that I would be criticized by others. He silently did everything he could to protect me. He didn't care about the insults others hurled at him. Thinking of this, my heart ached more than ever. I was so angry that I slapped the table and shouted, "Shut up! Have you eaten too much salt? Why do you like to gossip so much?" Everyone was silenced by my outburst. The hand on my waist also stopped obviously. Oh no. Would he think I was very rude? Just as I was worried, the He family's elder had already ordered someone to arrange a performance to draw the guests' attention away. And my parents walked around to me and dragged me backstage. "You ungrateful wretch. Are there no other women in the world? You had to come and snatch someone at your own nephew's wedding?" As soon as we entered the private room, Jan's grandfather was so angry that he cursed. He raised his walking stick and wanted to hit Wei Yuan. Wei Yuan had an indifferent expression. He didn't say a word and didn't seem to want to avoid it either. Without hesitation, I rushed forward to block the blow for him. In an instant, Wei Yuan's eyes darkened, and he raised his hand to catch Jan's grandfather's walking stick. "Sir, don't hurt the innocent." Yuan stood aside and sneered, as if it had nothing to do with him. "Wow. Man. I didn't expect you to be so skillful. You've managed to get together with my uncle." Before I could retort, I saw Wei Yuan, with his hands in his pockets, give Xian a cold glance and then kicked him. Xian immediately jumped behind Xian's grandfather to hide, looking like he had been wronged. "Man. What exactly is going on? Grandfather needs an explanation." Xian's grandfather stared at me. His light brown eyes were powerful. It was as if he was warning me that this matter couldn't be taken as a joke at all. "Grandfather. You've misunderstood. It's not what you think." I looked at Xian. "Stop pretending to be innocent. In fact, you didn't plan to marry me today either, right?" Xian was hit on the mark by me, and his expression froze slightly. Facing the questioning looks of the elders, he quickly adjusted himself. "Man. Don't act like a cornered dog and bite people randomly. Everyone clearly saw that you ran away halfway through the wedding. Then why did I run?" I slowly took out my phone and clicked on a recording. After some rustling noises, a voice of indescribable pleasure came out. Then, the voices of two men could be clearly heard. It was Jan and his good friend. "Be good. Stop making a fuss. You know I hate man. Her family made her marry me for the money. I'm so annoyed." "Then why are you still marrying her? Isn't it because the old man forced me?" "I don't care. I want you to prove that you love me." "How can I prove it?" "Run away from the wedding and show me." "Huh. Okay. I'll run away in front of everyone later. Let's make it a big deal." Before the wedding in my previous life, Jan disappeared for a period of time. I vaguely heard someone mention that they had seen him near the parking lot. I didn't pay much attention to it at that time. After being reborn, I remembered this matter. I always felt that something was not right. While having my makeup done, I asked my best friend to see if she could find out any suspicious things about Jan's runaway from the wedding. Unexpectedly, she really found something. As the two people in the recording became more and more intimate and explicit, the expressions of the people present changed from shock to shame and anger. Jan lost his smile and his face turned pale. He rushed over, trying to grab the phone. Wei Yuan was quick-eyed and quick-handed. He pulled me behind him, grabbed Xian's wrist with his hand, and kicked him with his foot. Xian fell to his knees with a thud. Xian's grandfather leaned heavily on his walking stick. Even his voice, which was asking me to turn off the audio, was trembling. He whipped Xian fiercely, hating him for not living up to expectations. "You're such a mess. And you still blame man? Get out of the Xian family." Xian had been stubbornly holding his neck, showing his dissatisfaction. As soon as he heard these words, he immediately admitted his mistake and begged for mercy. But Xian's grandfather shook off his hand and turned his back. He suddenly looked at me, crawled on his knees to me, and grabbed my skirt. "Man. Don't you like me? Please talk to Grandpa for me and ask him not to drive me away. Man. Please. I know I was wrong. In my previous life, after Xian ran away from the wedding and returned to the Xian family, when he begged for my forgiveness, he said the same words. I didn't have any feelings for Xian at that time. I just didn't make things difficult for him because he had saved me when we were children. But all these things took on a different meaning in Wei Yuan's eyes. He thought I still liked Jian and was no longer willing to express his feelings to me. Thinking of this, I raised my eyes to look at Wei Yuan. And he happened to lower his eyes. There were a few traces of coldness in his silent eyes. So, I imitated Wei Yuan and kicked Jian. Don't flatter yourself. If I liked you, why would I have run away just now? I will never help you again. Stay away from me. My disgusted attitude made Jian reveal his true colors. He laughed ferociously. Man. What are you so proud of? Do you know why Wei Yuan hasn't been in a relationship or gotten married all these years? He has a first love. You're waiting to be abandoned. Xian's grandfather couldn't stand his crazy appearance and ordered the bodyguards to take him back to the old mansion of the Xian family from the back door first. Then he held one hand of mine and one hand of Wei Yuan. Think it over. Do you want to get married or not? While I'm still able to back you up, consider it carefully. Once you get married, there's no going back. The wedding celebration didn't end until the evening. I don't know if Xian's grandfather was happy about the marriage between Wei Yuan and me or worried about Xian's matter. He drank a few more glasses of wine. When we saw him off to his car, his flushed face was full of drunkenness. Wei Yuan wanted to send him off in person, but he was pushed back with a tap of the walking stick. You kid. What are you pretending to be filial for now? On the wedding night, are you going to leave the bride alone in the bridal chamber? I stood beside them, blushing with shame. I quickly waved my hand and said I didn't mind. Xian's grandfather took our hands and placed them on top of each other. Grandpa is waiting to hold his great-grandchild. My face turned even redder. I secretly glanced at Wei Yuan, who was as calm as still water. I remembered when Xian's grandfather asked us to think it over just now, and he said inferiorly, I have no problem. Fine. 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 You can just keep pretending. Our hands were released. Only then did I realize that Xian's grandfather's Bentley had driven away. Wei Yuan's Maybach slowly drove over. And I happily got in, looking forward to my new life with him. But he raised his hand and closed the car door. After telling the driver to send me to his villa, he turned around and was about to leave. The moment the car started, I opened the car door and jumped out. The sharp sound of the brakes made him turn his head. When he saw me pouncing towards him, his expression froze. Then, let out a low sigh. I held him tightly. Come back with me. It was not a request, nor a query, but an order. Wei Yuan tried to break my hands apart, but I used all my strength and held him firmly. Not moving. He let out a sigh. Man. The purpose of the marriage alliance has been achieved, and the old man has also promised to give the newly auctioned land in the southern district to the Man family. What else do you want? I looked at Wei Yuan in disbelief. So he thought that everything I had done was just to seek benefits for my family? No wonder he had been in a low mood and his expression had always been cold since I slapped the table in the hall. You knew Xian's intention to renege on the marriage for a long time. But you also needed to hold on to the big tree of the Xian family. Except for me. There was no one else in the Xian family that you could use. So you took advantage of me. There's no one else here. You don't have to act anymore. Wei Yuan's face was cold, and he pried my fingers apart one by one. I was full of grievances and couldn't help crying out. What about you? You think of me like this, but you're still willing to marry me. Why? Did your first love not want you? The air froze. The dim yellow streetlight shone on Wei Yuan, and he didn't seem so cold anymore. But he didn't say a word and just looked at me quietly. It made me feel scared. Did I go too far? But why did he think of me like that? While I was struggling whether to give in or not, Wei Yuan leaned closer, reached out and gently pinched my chin. His voice was sour. She really didn't want me before. I dodged his gaze. Then, without, what about now? He suddenly curved his eyebrows and eyes. And his breath got closer. I also want to ask. Does she really want me now? What do you think? I was forced to look directly at Wei Yuan. His delicate facial features were so close. It made my heart beat faster. I think it's her loss if she doesn't want you. Anyway, having fulfilled Wei and Sashun, I like you. And I want you. in the face of my such a straightforward expression. Wei Yuan obviously didn't expect it. His expression froze slightly, and the coldness in his eyes melted away. Man. A good child doesn't lie. I'm not lying. I immediately denied it. Before he could speak again, I boldly kissed his mouth. I opened my eyes wide and admired his bewilderment. When I felt that he wanted to deepen the kiss, I pulled away. Uncle, I'm sincere to you. Do you believe it now? Suddenly, I felt myself lifted off the ground. I was picked up by Wei Yuan and held in his arms. My buttocks were slapped gently. I don't believe it. Wei Yuan held me and sat in the car. He raised the partition. 1 second he was scolding the driver for not noticing me opening the door when the car started. The next second he pressed the back of my head and kissed me until I was dizzy. In my previous life, we rarely had any physical contact. I really didn't expect that under Wei Yuan's ascetic appearance. He was so wild inside. He kissed me all the way home, and my mouth hurt from the kisses. When the car drove into the garage, he held me and got out of the car. I lay on his shoulder, still not having recovered. As soon as we entered the elevator, his body pressed against mine again. He was like a wolf cub that had been hungry for a long time, not letting go of me at all. Before we even entered the bedroom, we were already naked, in front of each other. After a while, in the huge living room, there were only the sounds of gentle sucking on the skin and soft sobbing. In a daze, I asked Wei Yuan angrily. Do you believe it now? The man held me tightly and said in a low voice. No. It's still not enough. Me. The next day, I woke up when the sun was high in the sky. My whole body ached. Wei Yuan had left marks on every inch of my body precisely. Naturally, he was long gone. I vaguely remembered that after the wedding, he flew abroad to deal with work and, by the way, having fulfilled my obsession, arranged to be transferred back to the country. Bastard. Pervert. He ran away after sleeping with me. He has no shame. I soaked in the bathtub and cursed and bridled lie. I cursed with all the words I could think of to describe a beast one by one. I dawdled for most of the day. I walked out of the bathroom, comfortably wrapped in a bathrobe. I raised my eyes and was startled. No, you and out a lol sigh. Why are you here? Wei Yuan sat on the sofa, smiling leisurely. I covered my pounding chest and avoided his scrutiny guiltily. I thought I'd come back to see you before going abroad. Wei Yuan's cold voice got closer, with a hint of teasing. Did you have a good bath? I nodded timidly, and didn't dare to say a word. Did you have a good time cursing? My face turned ashen. He really heard everything. My mind was quickly thinking about how to excuse myself. Suddenly, he put his arm around my shoulder and picked me up horizontally. What? What are you doing? His expression at this moment was exactly the same as when he said, "Be gentle" last night. He leaned close to my ear, his voice seductive. I'll verify whether I'm worthy of the words you cursed at me. Me, terrified. No need for that, right? I pleaded for mercy tremblingly. But it didn't arouse any pity from Wei Yuan. Instead, it made him even more excited. In a trance, someone's phone rang. I lazily lifted my eyelids and saw that Wei Yuan didn't seem to care and was still kissing me deeply and shallowly. I scratched his abdominal muscles and asked him to answer the phone. He got up reluctantly, frowning impatiently. After listening to the phone call, his anger increased. What's wrong? Wei Yuan's voice was cold. Someone leaked the matter online. Our wedding. And Aijan's recording. I turned on my phone. The fabrications about the marriage between the he and you families by Busboitus dominated the screen. Just like in my previous life, I was described as a bitch who was willing to serve to men for money. Wei Yuan was belittled as a hungry man who dared to swallow anything. In my previous life, not long after the incident happened, there were only scoldings about Wei Yuan left online. And the things related to me disappeared without a trace. A long time later, I heard his assistant casually mention. He was abroad at that time. When he learned the news, he was worried that I couldn't bear it. He immediately ordered someone to deal with my part first. At this moment, he was pacing back and forth in the living room. He was making one phone call after another to contact and arrange things. His serious and earnest expression was quite charming. It made me want to go up and take some advantage. When I saw him hang up the phone and his expression relaxed a little, using the sofa behind him as a springboard, I leapt forward gently. I wrapped my arms around his neck and my legs around his waist. "Uncle, you're so handsome." He hugged me backhandedly, pushed forward, and I sat firmly on the support formed by his hands. "Your mouth is so sweet. I'll taste what kind of candy you've eaten." He gently held my lips. It was really like tasting, rubbing back and forth. When my legs were getting weak, I pushed him away. "I still have work to do. I can't be too indulgent." Wei Yuan couldn't hide his smile. He put me back on the sofa and patted my head. "Wait for me. I'll be quick." I was so shy that I pretended to look at my phone, and my side glance followed his movements. Originally, Hadi fulfilled my amsa. Wei Yuan planned to deal with both my part and Xian's part at the same time. After all, that recording of his might affect the company's interests. Moreover, Grandpa was urging him urgently. He was afraid that the matter would get out of hand if it escalated, but to our surprise, there were no negative comments about Xian's recording online. Almost all of them were voices of support. There were also many people who were like-minded, and praised their courage and daring to do anything for love. I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, although Xian was one of the main characters of the wedding, he was kept out of the matter. There were few topics related to his name, but they were all praises for his feat of breaking free from the arranged marriage. At that time, Xian had already been sent by Grandpa to a factory in Africa. When Wei Yuan was investigating this matter, he excluded Xian's suspicion. But now it seems that maybe he was really the mastermind behind it. "What are you thinking about? I called you several times, and you didn't answer." Wei Yuan took my hand and kissed it. "I was thinking about Xian." The tenderness on Wei Yuan's face was shattered by gloom. "Man, by my side. You're thinking about another man?" The jealousy in his eyes turned into a lustful look. I was so scared that I quickly shook my head and waved my hands, saying, "No. You misunderstood. I was thinking that these things on the internet might have been done by Xian." "Him?" There was a hint of contempt in Wei Yuan's tone. I nodded. "At first, I thought someone had stolen the recordings from my phone or my best friend's phone. But I listened carefully to the recording on the internet. It's longer than ours. And the content is more about showing their pursuit of free love. Except for Xian himself. Who could have recorded these things? And who would specifically post it to support them?" Wei Yuan talked on the phone with his grandfather on the balcony for half an hour. There were intense quarrels more than once during that time. Finally, Wei Yuan hung up the phone. He blocked out his grandfather's roaring on the other end of the phone. I vaguely heard a couple of words like hospital and "it's not a disease" and such. Sitting back beside me, Wei Yuan looked exhausted. He rubbed the center of his brows, and his fingertips gently stroked the side of my neck. "What's wrong?" He let out a sigh. "Nothing. The old man is stubborn and can't be reasoned with. Do you need my help?" I blinked my eyes, showing my sincerity to share his worries. He gently pinched my chin, and the corners of his lips turned up. "There's really a favor that only you can do for me." I didn't notice the abnormality in Wei Yuan's expression. I was eager to try. Like someone showing off a precious treasure. Tell me quickly." Wei Yuan's eyes lit up little by little, and his body leaned closer little by little. "I've changed my flight ticket to the one in the evening." "Then, shall I see you off?" "No. You probably can't see me off." "Why?" "Let me see you off," I coquettishly said. "You have more important things to do." Wei Yuan stared at my mouth, and his Adam's apple moved. Before I could ask anything else, he had already pressed me down under him. "Man," went on a low sigh. "I'll be gone for a few days. Be good and do me a favor." Before I could react, Wei Yuan's powerful and lingering kiss wrapped around me. The light and shadow outside the window were flickering, making people dizzy. Before falling asleep, Wei Yuan kissed my forehead. His voice was hoarse and gentle. "Man, you are my first love. Never leave me." The public opinion on the internet was cleared up through a combination of various means. Life returned to peace. I was somewhat complacent in this tranquility. But I dare not forget the tragic scene of Wei Yuan and me dying in the previous life. I still don't believe that the car accident was just an accident. I remind Wei Yuan n times a day to remember to have the vehicle checked. No matter how tight the schedule is or how urgent the matter is, he must take the main road and pay attention to safety. He always listens to my instructions patiently. Like a devout believer, he is completely bowing down to the leader he believes in. The day before Wei Yuan was originally scheduled to return to the country, I made an appointment with my best friend to visit an art exhibition. In the evening, her friend invited her to sing at a KTV. Seeing that I was alone at home and would just be staying in an empty house if I went back, she dragged me along with her. In the private room, there were colorful lights, handsome men and beautiful women, and a lot of singing and laughter. I was holding the microphone and singing loudly when Wei Yuan's video call came in. I was so scared that I quickly threw the microphone to my best friend and rushed out to find a quiet place. After answering the call, I smiled sweetly. "Hi." Wei Yuan's eyes were bright, and his voice was warm. "What are you doing?" "I'm thinking of you." "MUA, MUA." I kissed the screen twice in a row, then adjusted my posture and winked at him. He raised his eyebrows slightly, and his expression was obscure. "I'll be back tomorrow." I nodded like a chick pecking at rice. "Okay, heading fulfilled my obsession." "Okay. Let me pick you up." "Okay?" "No, no. Just stay home and wait for me obediently." As he spoke, Wei Yuan was about to hang up the video call. "Okay then. Bye." As a result, he stood there in a daze for a long time and didn't hang up. I thought his network was lagging. "Are you still there? Then I'll hang up first." Finally, Wei Yuan on the screen moved. He seemed a bit dissatisfied. "Are you in a hurry?" "Ah?" I was indeed a bit in a hurry. I had ordered a lot of songs. If I didn't go back soon, I would have to order them again. But I couldn't say that. I shook my head. "Not really. I just left the water running. And I'm going to take a shower." Wei Yuan chuckled. "Okay. Go ahead. Take a good shower." I originally thought that this was just a flirtatious remark from him. Later, I realized that his tone was the same as when he said, "You're courting death." When the door of the private room was kicked open, I was singing "Missing You" as a kind of illness, with a handsome young guy. The moment Wei Yuan's head poked in, my singing stopped abruptly. He was hidden in the darkness. Occasionally, the colorful lights shone on him, making his face look gloomy, and it was hard to tell whether he was angry or not. From his perspective, the distance between me and the handsome young guy was really ambiguous. And today I was wearing a slit-long dress. My slender, fair legs were illuminated by the faint light, looking hazy and alluring. "Yo. Who is this uncle?" The handsome young guy's enthusiastic greeting was quickly silenced by my best friend. Then she gave me a look, telling me to take care of myself. In the car, it was completely silent. It was like the calm before the storm. This kind of environment reminded me of the previous life. Wei Yuan and I had a cold relationship. My best friend invited me to go out and have fun more than once. She said I shouldn't treat myself badly. But I didn't want to make our relationship even worse. So I always made excuses. Why the hell did I agree this time? I even sang a love song with another handsome guy. And I lied. My fingers nervously clenched the edge of my skirt. And I didn't dare to look at Wei Yuan at all. Throughout the whole process, he was silent. This instead deepened my panic. Bang, the door was closed. I shuddered all over and groped for the light switch in the dark. Suddenly, a big hand reached over and clasped my hand. He pushed aside my long hair and kissed my neck tickly. "Wait. I want to take a shower." The man's voice without any warmth echoed in the room. "Didn't you already take a shower?" My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly admitted my mistaken fear. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have lied to you." But Wei Yuan didn't let go. He pushed me towards the bathroom, and his voice was dull. "What else?" "I shouldn't have gone to the KTV to sing behind your back." "Go on." "I shouldn't have sung a love song with someone else." My voice as soft as a mosquito's, was drowned out by the sound of running water. Wei Ayuan's fingertips brushed across my skin, burning hot. What song did you sing? Ah? I didn't expect him to ask me this. And my mind went blank for a moment. Sing it for me. No. I refused immediately. My face, heated by the steam, was so red that it seemed to be bleeding. Be good. What song did you sing? Sing it for me. The water seemed to carry Wei Ayuan's pressure towards me, forcing me into a corner. In the mist, his eyes were dangerous and captivating. An hour later, I was limp and slumped on him. He carried me back to the bedroom. And I was still humming, "Missing You Is a Kind of Illness," as he had requested. Since that day, Wei Ayuan has taken this as an excuse and has been enthusiastically torturing me every night. Now, just hearing the word singing gives me a stress reaction. However, seeing Wei Ayuan's intact and handsome face, my heart is still filled with more joy. At noon, Wei Ayuan came home to pick me up for a meal. In the elevator, Wei Ayuan's half-smiling face made me angry. I tightened the silk scarf around my neck and pinched his hand that was holding mine hard. Hiss, he frowned slightly, lowered his eyes, and the corners of his mouth turned up. You're still laughing. It's all your fault. You knew we were going out today, but you still insist on leaving hickeys all over me. Are you afraid that others won't know you're a master of leaving hickeys? It's summer, and if I keep wearing this silk scarf, I'll definitely get he trash. Wei Ayuan didn't care. He held me tightly with one hand and tried to untie my silk scarf with the other. Why don't you just not wear it? Does he want me to swagger around with a field of hickeys on my neck? I dodged his hand. When the elevator door opened, I tried to run out. Unexpectedly, I slipped and fell into Wei Ayuan's arms. My hand just managed to slide through the gap between the buttons of his shirt and touched his firm chest muscles. Man. He caught my hand that was trying to escape. Are you flirting with me? In a hurry, I reached out to cover the lustful look in Wei Ayuan's eyes. And a cold voice broke the intimacy. How can you be so shameless as to steal someone else's happiness and still laugh? The person stood with half of his body hidden in the corner. His face was illuminated by the cold white light, looking terrifying. He was Fan, John's friend, and also the other protagonist in that recording. I hadn't seen him since the wedding. He stared at Wei Ayuan with hatred in his eyes. What are you doing here? After learning about his secret relationship with Xian, I didn't welcome him. Man. Xian treated you well before. How could you have the heart to let him be locked up in a mental hospital? A mental hospital? I turned my head and looked at Wei Ayuan. There was no ripple in his eyes at all. I suddenly remembered the intense argument he had with his grandfather before. His words clearly showed his opposition to this matter. The strength on my hand suddenly loosened. Wei Ayuan looked ahead. I'll wait for you in the car. Wei Ayuan. What kind of uncle are you? You snatched your nephew's V.A. key and locked him up in that kind of place. What era is this? Our love is true. What's wrong with that? Fan clenched his fists and wanted to chase after Wei Ayuan. But I stood in the middle to block him. Stop making trouble. This wasn't decided by Wei Ayuan. Besides, Xian himself did something wrong. Who else can he blame? Fan frowned. Man. He just loves men. What's wrong with that? I sneered. There's nothing wrong with loving someone. But it's wrong to hurt others for the sake of your own love. Why did he agree to marry me if he liked you? If he wanted to run away from the wedding, he could have just not come. Why did he have to make me look like a fool in public? Fan was left speechless by my words. I turned sideways to leave. Fan quickly walked around in front of me and knelt down with a thud. His knees hit the ground, making a crisp sound. Man. Please help him just this once. Talk to Xian's grandfather and ask him not to lock Xian up in that kind of place. Even if he wasn't sick, he'll end up getting sick there. In the previous life, Xian was arranged by the He family's elder to go to a factory in Africa. I remember that Fan also knelt down and begged me like this. I was soft-hearted and helped them at that time. It made Wei Ayuan think that I hadn't let go of Xian, deepening the misunderstanding between us. I can't help him. My voice was cold without a trace of warmth. Fan's stubborn voice was tinged with a sob. If you don't promise to help him, I won't get up. Whatever. Before leaving, I stared at his eyes suspiciously. Some time ago. The recording about the two of you on the internet. You guys put it up, right? Although that matter was finally resolved, we still don't know who did it. Looking at fans' words about pursuing true love, it's exactly the same as the voices on the internet supporting them. Fans' expression froze. And he dodged my gaze. I don't understand what you're talking about. Is that so? Then forget it. I withdrew my scrutinizing gaze and ran towards Wee Ayuan's Maybach. I left behind fans' roar. You will get your comeuppance. I got into the car. As soon as the car door was closed, Wee Ayuan signaled the driver to drive. I wasn't seated firmly, and my body tilted to the side, almost falling over. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Wee Ayuan's hand reaching towards me. But it quickly retracted after I steadied myself. My playful mood came back again. I had the idea of teasing him. Is Jan really locked up in a mental hospital? I deliberately showed a worried expression. Wee Ayuan gave me a cold look. Feeling sorry for him? I nodded almost imperceptibly and said with a hesitation expression. After all, we almost became husband and wife. If I really ignore him, wouldn't it seem too heartless? After saying that, I deliberately turned his face towards me so that our eyes met. The anger in Wee Ayuan's eyes rose. And there was a strong hint of jealousy. The veins on his forehead gradually became more prominent. Say that again. He gritted his back teeth and said each word slowly. I pretended to be naive. Which sentence? Is it the sentence about being too heartless? Or the one about almost becoming husp? The latter part of my words was swallowed up by Wee Ayuan's lips pressing against mine. UMMM. What are UMMM? He pressed my head firmly. And I couldn't break free. He stopped only when I was almost out of breath. He pressed his forehead against mine. And his tone was sour. Man. Now that you've married me, you still dare to have someone else in your heart? I shook my head and quickly admitted my mistake. No, I was just teasing you. Wee Ayuan was amused by my words. Tease me? I nodded vigorously like a garlic masher. I raised my right hand and swore. Really? I'm not lying to you. Just now, Fan knelt down to me and asked me to help Xian. But I didn't agree. The chill in Wee Ayuan's eyes dissipated. He stroked my cheek gently. One stroke at a time. He leaned in with his lips and invaded my mouth. Man. Don't tease me with such things. I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences. At this moment, I still didn't realize that the situation was getting out of control. While responding to his kiss, I said playfully. What consequences? Could it be that you can eat me up? Until he tapped on the partition with his beautiful knuckles. I didn't know what code he was giving to the driver. The car turned around and drove back home. Weren't we going out for dinner? Wee Ayuan, I'll eat you first. The sunlight quietly seeped into the gap in the unclosed curtains. Together with the alarm clock. It woke me up. I rubbed my bleary eyes and tried to turn over and get up. But my waist was tightly wrapped by someone. Wife, having till wife. Don't leave me. Looking at Wee Ayuan's insatiable face, I felt an inexplicable pang in my heart. Could it be that he still didn't fully believe my love for him? Just like in the previous life, did he think that I would leave at any moment? Since the wedding, his frequent demands. Was it to confirm my feelings for him? Or was he afraid that everything was like a dream that would shatter? I turned my head and placed a kiss on his lips. Wee Ayuan. I like you. And I won't leave you. I said I would be with you properly. And I will keep my word. After saying that, I kissed him again. It made him smile. He ruffled my hair and pulled me into his arms. Let's be together well. It's a deal. Yeah. I set the alarm clock today to go and get the marriage certificate early. It was a good day that Grandpa had specially asked someone to calculate. But Wee Ayuan lingered in bed with me. And we missed the time. He still had an important meeting in the morning that couldn't be delayed, so we had to change the time for getting the marriage certificate to the afternoon. We made an appointment to have lunch near his company at noon, and then go to the Civil Affairs Bureau together. It was almost time. And I finished my makeup and was ready to go out. I received a message from my best friend on my phone. It was a photo of Wei Ayuan with his bare chest, hugging a girl. And he was smiling heartily. Soon. I received her voice message. Man. Have you seen the headlines? Wei Ayuan was exposed for cheating. What's the situation? I logged into the headlines. This photo of Wei Ayuan was placed together with the photos of our wedding. There were mockery and scolding everywhere. He just got married not long ago and already cheated. Men are really despicable. The wealthy families play around a lot. If you want to make money, you have to be mentally prepared. There are really a lot of news about this Yan family. I blindly guessed that there will be divorce news in a few days. My best friend told me that this photo wasn't synthesized. Man. Before you get the marriage certificate, think it over carefully. Once a man cheats, there will be a second time. After reassuring my best friend, I fell into deep thought. As far as I could remember, I hadn't seen this photo in the previous life. At this moment, the things that Wei Ayuan and I were slandered about some time ago, and the car accident that happened to us in the previous life all came to my mind. I looked back at the photo again. I was restless and immediately went out. When I arrived at the He Corporation, the assistant said that he was still in a meeting. He didn't know yet that there was a lot of scolding online. I clenched my hands tightly and paced back and forth in his office. I hadn't connected all the things with the car accident before. I just thought that Busboides were spreading rumors. I didn't pay too much attention to it. But now the direction was clear. Just thinking that there was an invisible hand that might take Wei Ayuan's life at any time. My tears couldn't stop flowing out. Man. Have you been waiting for a long time? The moment Wei Ayuan pushed the door open, I threw myself into his arms, and cried so hard that I couldn't catch my breath. Good man. Stop crying. It makes my heart ache when you cry like this. After hearing why I was crying, Wei Ayuan pointed to his heart and comforted me. What time is it already? And you're still so calm. He raised his hand and looked at his watch, looking as if he was facing a formidable enemy. Yes, having fulfilled my session. It's already this time. Man must be hungry. I'll take you to have a meal. And then we'll go to get the marriage certificate after that. I was amused by his appearance. Wei Ayuan. Be serious. This is a matter related to your life. He kissed away my tears. Don't worry. I'll be fine. I can't bear to leave you. He quickly made phone calls and arranged to deal with those rumors on the internet. Then he took me out of the company. In the afternoon, after coming out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, Wei Ayuan took me back to the old mansion of the Xian family. On the way, he asked me if I had ever suspected him when I first saw the photo. No. I answered firmly and sincerely. You trust me so much. There was a playful look in Wei Ayuan's eyes. I remembered again that at the end of the previous life, he resolutely gave up everything and accompanied me to death. As long as anyone had seen his helpless appearance, they wouldn't have the slightest doubt about him. Moreover, there were flaws in this photo itself. I pointed at the photo. He really looks a lot like you. But if you look closely at his hand, it's not as slender as yours. That hand was placed on the inside. And when people look at the photo, they will subconsciously look at the face first. Unless it's someone close. It's very difficult to notice the hand. Also, why is there only a profile photo? Wouldn't it be more convincing to put more front-facing photos? It's very likely that the front-facing photos will reveal the differences between you and him and won't serve the purpose of framing you. Wei Ayuan listened calmly but pretended to be disappointed. I thought you trusted me so much because you loved me deeply. It turns out that the opponent is just too stupid. I couldn't help but purse my lips and smile. And I held his hand tightly. Yes, I'd fulfilled my session. Yes, I'd fulfilled my session. I love you so much that I don't believe you would do such a thing. I know you love me and won't make me sad. So, find the culprit as soon as possible. I'm really scared. Scared that I might lose you one day. As I spoke, I started crying again. Wei Ayuan was stunned for a moment in surprise and quickly hugged me tightly. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I'm here. And nothing will happen. I sniffled and hugged him back. I didn't stop crying until we reached the gate of the He mansion. When we entered the door, we saw Grandpa Xian sitting in the yard, staring into the sky in a trance. I didn't know if it was an illusion. He seemed to have aged a lot compared to when I saw him a few days ago. We Yuan and I helped him into the study together. He showed the photo to Grandpa Xian. Grandpa Xian squinted his eyes and leaned closer to the phone. When he saw it clearly, his expression changed greatly. This, let out a low sigh. Who sent this? We Yuan replied lazily, except for your good grandson. Who else could have this photo? As soon as Xian was mentioned, Grandpa Xian's angry expression was mixed with annoyance and regret. In the minds of their older generation, they couldn't accept Xian's sexual orientation. They even thought that it was enough to destroy him. If he couldn't correct it in his life, it was unlikely that he could step into the He Corporation again. Unless something happened to Wei Yuan. Thinking of this, my heart ached. Many scenes from the previous life suddenly flashed through my mind. At a shareholders' meeting before the car accident, several projects proposed by Xian were all rejected by Wei Yuan. He made a scene with Wei Yuan regardless of his image, and even said some unpleasant words like Wei Yuan was deliberately making things difficult for him because of me. Wei Yuan was so angry that his face turned pale. He kicked Xian out of the meeting room in public. We all thought that Xian would go to Grandpa to reason or continue to cause trouble with Wei Yuan. But he didn't. He acted as if nothing had happened that afternoon. He even bought a gift to apologize to Wei Yuan. So this dispute was downplayed by him. As a result, after being reborn, I underestimated his harmfulness. Grandpa Xian said with a disappointed expression, "Send him abroad and find someone to watch over him. Don't allow him to come back again." Then, let out a low sigh. He took out the proposal to appoint Xian as the vice president of the He Corporation from a stack of documents and shredded it with a paper shredder. "You can go now. I'm tired." Before we went out, I saw Grandpa Xian take out a yellowed old photo from the bottom of the bookcase. On it was obviously a man who looked 7 parts similar to Wei Yuan. He is the old master's illegitimate son. He is also Xian's biological father. After leaving the He mansion, Wei Yuan told me the story of the photo in detail. Actually, I had already guessed the relationship between him and Grandpa Xian. But I didn't expect that he was Xian's biological father. Since I was a child, I only knew that Xian's father died early and didn't know about this secret. When the old master found him, he had already developed the bad habit of gambling. His wife ran away and left their son with him. But he didn't care about him either. The old master wanted to force him to quit gambling. So he took Xian away and left him to his own devices. Finally, having fulfilled Wei Sai, he gambled away his own life. I was silent. I felt a little more contempt for Xian in my heart. He was willing to use his dead father to achieve his goals. But why did he use such a roundabout way to frame Wei Yuan? It was different from what he did in the previous life. Could it be that he knew that I was reborn? Wei Yuan. If I said that I was Rebo, I was just about to confess to him and remind him that there was a high probability that Xian was reborn. But he received a phone call. His face became serious. What's wrong? My people lost track of Fan. Wei Yuan's eyes were deep, and his voice was stern. I suspect that he is involved in those things on the internet before. After he showed up last time, I was afraid that he would do something bad to you. So I had someone follow him. This kid has a high ability to counter reconnaissance. He should have noticed that someone was following him early on and deliberately went to the downtown area today to shake them off. I shuddered all over and grabbed Wei Yuan's arm. Didn't Grandpa ask you to send Xian away? Hurry. Go to his hospital. He gave me a sidelong glance. What? You're reluctant to part with him and want to take a look before he leaves? It's too late. I'm afraid he's already been sent to. I poked Wei Yuan's head hard. Why are you being so jealous? I think Fan should have gone to find him. The photo was a smokescreen. Xian knew clearly that that person was a Wei Yuan. If the Xian family took action, whether it was to clarify or to withdraw, it wouldn't ultimately achieve his goal of smearing Wei Yuan. So he just wanted to cause some trouble to hold them back and distract them. It was the same purpose as that recording on the internet before. He wanted Xian to be released. Or find a way to escape. When we arrived at the hospital, the group of bodyguards that Wei Yuan had sent to pick up Xian were lined up in front of the restroom door. What are you all standing here for? Wei Yuan's voice of rebuke wasn't very loud, but it had a strong deterrent force. Several bodyguards shuddered simultaneously. Mister. The young master said that he had a stomachache. Wei Yuan gave me a sidelong glance and then looked at the restroom thoughtfully. How long has he been in? Almost half an hour. Wei Yuan rushed in with a big step. He kicked open each compartment. Aishan wasn't in there at all. Useless. Hurry up and look for him. The bodyguards were terrified and immediately scattered to search for Xian's whereabouts. Xian had just undergone electrovectus therapy in the morning. His body was very weak. When the bodyguards found him, he probably couldn't run anymore and was lying on the grass not far from the back door of the hospital, gasping for breath. By the time Wei Yuan and I arrived, he could barely sit up straight. Where's Fan? Wei Yuan glared down at him. Did you lock him up here too? Xian played dumb. Fine. Wei Yuan snorted coldly. Anyway, after today, you two won't be able to see each other again. He gave a look, and two bodyguards stepped forward to help Xian. When I turned around and started walking back, my neck was suddenly tightened. Don't move. Fan somehow dashed out from behind me. He was pressing a cold knife tip against me and ordering Wei Yuan to release Xian. Wei Yuan's gaze turned cold and resolute. He slowly moved forward, forcing Fan to step back. Hold that knife steady. If you hurt her even a little bit, I'll make you bleed like a fountain. Fan's hand trembled slightly. I heard him swallow hard and then he roared at Wei Yuan. Don't come any closer. I really will kill her. I don't ask for anything else. Just let me take Xian away. I thought that after the recording was made public, the He family's elder would be moved, but he actually had the heart to lock Xian up here. I had no choice but to put that photo on the internet. I just wanted to save Xian. Wei Yuan turned his head and glanced at Xian. Then turned back. Did you do all of this alone? Xian's eyes darkened. And Fan immediately became more aggressive. Anyway, let us go. I won't hurt Man. Otherwise, we'll all die together. He was so excited that the blade lightly scratched my skin. The pain hit me. Warm liquid seeped out. You're courting death. Wei Yuan's eyes turned red. He grabbed Xian's hair and choked his neck. Release Man immediately. I'm not negotiating with you. Seeing Xian's face turning paler and paler, Fan lost his nerve. While he was thinking, I aimed at his foot and stepped on it. The knife in his hand dropped. The two bodyguards took the opportunity to surround and subdue him. Wei Yuan threw Xian aside and rushed forward to hug me tightly. I'm sorry. Man. I'm to blame for letting you get hurt. I stroked the reddish corner of Wei Yuan's eye. And the image of him resolutely accompanying me to death in the previous life appeared in my mind again. I comforted him. I'm okay. Don't be afraid. It's all over. Wei Yuan accompanied me to deal with the wound. He pestered the doctor to repeatedly confirm the condition of my injury. In the end, the doctor was at a loss. Mr. Xian, even if you don't believe in our medical skills, you should believe in the strength of human beings. This small wound won't be life-threatening. He wanted to trouble the doctor further, but I stopped him. That's enough. It's really just a scratch on the skin. Before I could finish speaking, my mouth was kissed by Wei Yuan. The doctor and the nurse were still standing there. I pushed him hard to get him off me. I turned away my blushing face and ignored him. He took my hand and rubbed it against his face. Let's just wait and see. If anything goes wrong, none of them will live. Me. He's just joking. He didn't mean you. I explained awkwardly to the doctor and the nurse whose faces had turned pale with fear because of Wei Yuan. And then dragged him out of the treatment room. We came to the ward where Xian was being held. He was wrapped tightly in cloth strips. In half an hour, he would be sent on the private plane arranged by Xian's grandfather. When he saw us, he was so excited that he tried to rush over, but was held down by the doctor standing beside him. Man. Please talk to my uncle and let me go. I know I was wrong. I'll find a place to hide and won't cause any more trouble. Don't torture me like this anymore. Xian cried and begged me for help. I raised my eyes. Wei Yuan glared at me. Don't you dare plead for him. I looked back at Xian. He had long lost his former suave figure. He was thin, with sunken eyes and a nervous look. He really looked pitiful. He seemed to sense a trace of compassion in my eyes. Finally, Henning fulfilled my sigh. He brought up the kindness he had shown me when we were children. Man. For the sake of saving your life. Please help me. Say that again. Who saved her? When I was 10 years old. I went swimming with Sean. He thought the swimming pool at home wasn't exciting enough. So he went with Fan and the others to a reservoir. At first, I didn't dare to get into the water. But Xian and Fan encouraged me. Xian even reached out to pull me in. After swimming for a while and getting used to it, they left me behind and swam towards the deeper part. I slowly followed them, but suddenly my leg cramped. I shouted loudly, but they ignored me. As my leg became more and more immobile, my body sank. Before losing consciousness, I saw a figure swimming towards me, calling my name. When I woke up, the first person I saw was Yan. I thought he had saved me. He didn't deny it either. In both my previous life and this life, I thought Xian was my savior. Wei Yuan's voice was hoarse. There was a fierce look in his eyes. Xian suddenly lost his strength and fell backward limply, mumbling to himself. I was always the one who accompanied you in the hospital later. Right? I looked at Wei Yuan with surprise and joy. It was you. The one who saved me was actually Yao. Wei Yuan's palm pressing on me was warm and powerful. When you were very young, I promised that I would protect you. I've always remembered it. But you forgot. His sad expression made my heart skip a beat. I plunged into his arms. I'm sorry. It was my fault. I won't forget again. So man, can you help me for the sake of the care I once did you? The atmosphere was spoiled by Xian's question. No. I won't help. I walked up to Xian and grabbed his collar. I just wanted to tell you. Don't pretend to be pitiful. Even if you saved me. It was you who forced me to get into the water. What's more, now I know you've been deceiving me for so long. There's no way I'll help you. Not at all. I leaned a little closer to his ear and told him in a voice that only the two of us could hear. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. Let you out and then try to kill us? Adding up the debts you owe from your previous life. You'd better stay locked up and repent. There was a hint of red in Xian's eyes. He howled with indignation. Man. You did it on purpose from the start, didn't you? All my plans were ruined by that recording of yours. Come back. Let me out. If you have the guts. Let me out and fight you 300 rounds. Wei Yuan let me hold his arm and led him out of the ward. He looked back at the hysterical Xian. What did you say to him? He's acting like a madman. I smiled and curled my lips. Nothing. I just told him that in his previous life, he was a monkey who made a big mistake. And in this life, he can only be suppressed under the 5 elements mountain. Wei Yuan held my palm and kissed it, indulging me as I talked nonsense. So much so that I ignored his jealousy. Until after we sent Fan to the police station. When we got home, as soon as I closed the door, he pressed me against the door and pinned me beneath him. Man. Don't you think you were a little too close when you were talking to Xian just now? Me. That night, the evening breeze stirred the curtains, making a rustling sound. Someone was lingering passionately both in and out of the dream. Even the moon peeking out from behind the clouds seemed to be smiling. Extra chapter Wei Yuan when the Man family moved in. Man was still a little taut. There were no girls in the Xian family. I liked her the moment I saw her. I was 10 years older than her. When we first met, I could already hold her in my arms. Call me brother. I teased her. She grinned with her toothless mouth and laughed giggle. My dad came over to spoil the fun. What brother? She should call you uncle. As a result, Man burst into tears with a wow. My dad brought back a little boy. He was the same age as Man. He was extremely excited. He said that he could finally fulfill the betrothal agreement made with the Yu family's elder. I was confused. Why couldn't it be me? I was only 10 years older. Older people know how to care for others better. That little kid definitely wouldn't like Man as much as I did. Man grew up. She was chubby and so cute. However, I was too busy with my studies. I couldn't see her often. And every time I saw her, she would just sweetly call me, little uncle. After that, she would run after that brat Xian. I saw Jean leading her behind several times, almost making her fall. Even so, the elder still wanted to match them together. For the first time, I felt that I was born at the wrong time. My desk mate told me that he had a girl he liked. It was our class monitor. He asked me who I liked. I thought for a long time, and man's face popped into my mind. I was even shocked myself. Damn it. Am I really a pervert? Do I like young girls? When I went home on the weekend, I didn't dare to see Man. I was afraid that the adults would notice my feelings. But I happened to see her hiding in the garden and crying. I asked her why. She said that Xian's grandfather told her that she would marry Xian in the future. Xian shouted and called her ugly and refused to marry her. I blurted out, "I'll marry you." She stopped crying and smiled. And we even hooked our fingers. I promised that I would protect her forever. Fortunately, there was no one around. Otherwise, they would definitely suspect that I stole the sunset glow to use as rouge. The old master asked me to go abroad for training. I deliberately set aside 2 days to come back and see Man. The nanny said she heard that Xian was taking her to play at the reservoir. Is that a place for playing? I immediately drove to find them. And something really happened. Man was thrashing about in the water. When she was rescued, she was already unconscious. Later, my father had something that he insisted I handle. When Man woke up, she didn't remember that I had saved her. As Man grew older, she became more and more distant from me. However, towards Xian, she was still his little follower as always. Perhaps what my father said was right. The generation gap is really a real thing. They are the suitable couple. Just then, the company needed someone to go abroad. Who else but me should go? To be honest, I didn't really want to come back to attend their wedding. I haven't completely let go of Man. Over the years, when I occasionally returned to the country and saw her, that flutter in my heart still needed to be forcefully suppressed, so I didn't dare to stay for long each time. As long as she was happily with Xian, I could endure it. Over the years, people have always spread the word that there must be someone in my heart, which is why I don't fall in love or get married. Yes, heading to Silva and Session. There is someone. Someone who is impossible to be with. I really laughed at myself. When Man rushed towards me, I was actually still worried that she would fall. And I always had a feeling. The plot shouldn't develop like this. But when she told me she liked me and asked me if I was willing to marry her, fireworks were going off in my head. I finally kind of understood the mood of those young people who could be excited all night just by sending a message. But didn't she always like Xian? Why did she suddenly say such things to me? I replied to her coldly. And I regretted it immediately. I made her cry. It turned out that Xian doesn't like women. The old master really didn't expect this even with all his calculations. This brat. He should have said it earlier. If he had said it earlier, everyone wouldn't have been so embarrassed. I also wouldn't have to keep doubting myself whether Man likes me or just needs the in-law relationship with the Xian family. Originally, heading felt why I'm sorry. I wasn't sure and didn't want to delay her. But she took the initiative to tease me. Then I won't be polite. I admit that I'm obsessed with Man. As long as she's by my side, I can't help but want to get close to her. When she's not around, I feel extremely restless. I finished my work ahead of schedule and came back to give her a surprise. It was indeed a surprise. But it was a surprise she gave me. She was so busy deceiving me that she forgot there was the name of that KDB pasted on her back. So she likes singing love songs. Right? I'll satisfy her. I'll make her sing for me every day. She cried and called me a pervert. I can't care so much. I'll admit to being a pervert. She has to know that once she gets into my thief's bed, I won't let her go. This kid Xian has a lot of crooked thoughts. But he ended up trapping himself. First, he tried to use the recording to pressure the old master. But it didn't work. Then he asked Fan to beg Man. But that didn't work either. Then he dug out the photo of his father to play with. At the moment before the car crashed and people died, I heard his murmur in my ear. The old master originally only planned to send him abroad and have someone watch over him. And no longer lock him up. But now, the old master can't save him either. Just like what Man said. He should be locked under the Five Fingers Mountain and reflect on himself well. After indulging in passionate love, man reached out and hugged me. She murmured and asked me if I believed in reincarnation. From the fact that she always reminded me to pay attention to vehicle maintenance and safety, I guessed that man should know something that I didn't. But it doesn't matter anymore. I gently pecked her lips. Anyway, we're together now. We're together in this life and we'll always be together. She smiled faintly and raised her head to respond to me. This night was infinitely elongated. It's hard to return from being lost in the depths of the dense forest. Lingering and tossing. The beauty in my arms is worth looking forward to. The end.